The 2-3 rule. So normally, that's what I'm calling it now, the 2-3 rule. But it's I always said it before that the first 2 turns is the best time to try to do the most amount of damage, because your opponent's defensive capability is less on the first 2 turns of the game than it is on turn 3 and above, because there's a lot of cards that need to be played on turn 2 or higher, and then it's just the fact that sometimes your opponent will not tap out all 3 energy. They'll tap out 2 energy and keep 1 energy up for like a negate or something. So it gets harder after the first 2 turns to do damage. Not impossible, but of course just harder because your opponent's going to put effort. So that's something you gotta keep in mind. This type of information, I don't really see anybody putting it out there like that. You would expect it. What's ironic is I always expect people who play competitively to actually make, like have YouTube channels and stuff like that, and actually share their insights. Things like this, like the whole 2-3, rule and stuff like that. Like, these are the kind of things you expect from competitive players. Instead, it's always just like, oh, I'm playing this deck and that deck, and here's the spicy tech I put in the deck, and that's it. So they only talk like whenever they do good at an event. Not saying that, the point is that the only time you hear some information about game theory or just some information about what works in the game and in the competitive sense is always whenever they do like a deck profile for like somebody's channel or something like that. It's the only time I ever see them. Like, they don't have their own channels typically where they're like, hey, this, that, and the third, this is what I'm doing, this and that. Like, even when I'm in the Facebook groups, I barely see people, giving out ideas and tips and stuff like that. It's like most people either just wait until somebody posts something and then just give their opinions on the post, or when they do put something out, it'll be something like maybe just a gameplay video, but no commentary, no. Like I said, there's no like educational information specifically. It's always just like, here's a deck list. Here's what everybody else is playing. Like, this card, is really good, and it's $100 per copy. Go get it, and that's it. Like, that's not really educational. That's not really informative, and it doesn't help the variety of players, because there's players who don't have a lot of money, so they can't afford all them expensive good cards, as some people call it, right? So then they would need advice on budget options, but most people don't do that. Most people don't try to share budget option information. It's all about the expensive stuff. Oh, in order to play this deck, you got to have all these TPs. I don't play like, I use King Piccolo as an example. I don't use King Piccolo like the TPs or whatever for King Piccolo. I played the budget version, but a lot of players will be like, oh, there's no such thing as a budget version of King Piccolo. You either play, quote unquote, the proper build, or you don't. There's only one way to play it, and it's like, that's false. There's multiple ways of playing decks, and I tend to lean towards the budget route. One, because it's not necessary to spend a lot of money on a deck, in the first place, when budget options are available. And if I can do really good or win with a budget option versus an expensive option, why would I waste time playing the more expensive version when the budget version is good enough, right? It does what it needs to do, especially when the core of what makes the deck work is the budget cards, not the expensive cards. The expensive cards just adds, extra abilities to the deck. It's like having a Honda Civic or something, or having like a non-high quality, non-high performance car, but then spend a lot of money to turn it into a really, awesome car, right? You spend a lot of money on rims and speaker systems and decorations and decal and all that stuff, and you wrap your car in some anime patterns or some shit. Like, you took something, basic, right? You took something low budget and then you made it look better, right? By putting a whole bunch of expensive stuff on it. But in reality, it's like spray painting poop with gold paint and saying that it's actual gold. Like, No, it's still shit. So the idea is that the irony is the core of a deck, which usually is common, like common cards and stuff like that, low budget, right? Low cost cards are the real reasons why the deck even really functions. It's not the high cost cards, right? You could play a blue deck without Baby Hatchiyak because the mathematical odds of you getting Hatchiyak in every game, is very low. But you will always get access to all the other cards that aren't. And a lot of people love super combos, so the super combos are definitely budget, right? So to believe that high rarity and expensive cards are must-have or very important for a deck is like, that's false. But anyway, the 2-3 rule. Sorry about that. Got off a tangent. 2-3 rule. Like I said, the first 2 turns is the best time to try to do the most damage. After turn 2, once you get to turn 3 and above, it gets harder. So you gotta put in more effort. So you have to have plans for those turns. So whenever I mulligan, I always mulligan my defensive cards away and keep my offensive cards. My Champas and stuff like that. Maybe an Overwhelm card or something like that, especially if I can guarantee I can drop the Overwhelm on turn 2 at least, right? So that way I can just take advantage of it, especially if it's like a 30k double strike, battle card. Overwhelm, I might want to drop it on turn 2 and just swing hard with 30k plus attack, double strike to my opponent, deal that nice double strike damage and get my opponent closer to 2 to 1 life, and then just play out my deck's capabilities until I finish my opponent off and deal the last 2 damages. So that's just the basic layout of the 2-3 concept, because most players, they don't play that way. They don't play with the intent of doing 4 to 6 damage in the first 2 to 3 turns of the game, so that way on turn 4 they could try to go for game, or just go for game when the time is right. Sometimes you gotta wait until turn 5 or 6 to go for game. So you gotta have a little bit of patience. You gotta be prepared. You gotta pay attention to your hands. Sometimes I notice that most people don't pay attention to their hands. Like, their hands is very defensive, but they tend to try to be offensive. So they tend to try to push their luck in a certain turn when they should try to hold back because they have a defensive hand. If you have an offensive hand, go off. It's an offensive hand. That means the cards in your hands are only really good for attacking, so there's no point in holding back. Go all in and unleash your hands full power. But if your hand's defensive, there's more defensive cards in it than offensive, then you need to fall back and play your defensive cards until you get your offensive cards, and then switch up. Which is why mulliganing in the beginning of the game is very important. I pretty much mulligan every time. Every time. And I typically mulligan 2 to 3 cards, so it goes back to the 2-3 rule, right? The concept of 2 and 3. I mulligan between 2 and 3, sometimes 4 cards, depending. It's very rare for me mulligan almost my whole hand, but I try to mulligan at least half my hand, so that's 2 to 3 cards. So and like I said before, put the defensive cards away, because I'm trying to go in on my opponent's life points early game, because late game is, I'm gonna have to make certain decisions. I'm gonna have to change up what I'm doing based off of my opponent's board state, based off of what they're doing, especially if I see that they're close to their win con or their game plan or some type of strategy. I need to make sure that I'm able to adjust myself to that. Don't allow myself to be in a position where that I'm not in a favorable position, because you want, the idea is you want your opponent against the ropes, as they say, right? You want your opponent behind. You want your opponent to be afraid that if they don't keep the defenses up, they can lose, because at any given moment you can end up, dealing double strike for game or something like that. So that's why it's important to get them down to very low life, so that way it puts them against the ropes, right? Puts them on a clock, and just like in a real fight, right? You want to keep your opponent, constantly, keeping the guard up. You don't want them constantly throwing punches at you. You want them to keep the guard up while you throwing punches. So you always want to make sure that, that you hit your opponent more than they hit you, right? If they hit you for 1 damage, you got to hit them for 2. I haven't said that in a long time. That's an old concept, because it's just the whole race thing. You're trying to race them to the end, right? So if they hit you for 1 damage, you got to hit them for 2. If they hit you for 2, hit them for 3 or more, right? 4 would be better. The idea is to always hit them back twice as much as they hit you, but get what you can. If you can't deal 4 damage after they dealt you 2 damage, at least do 3. And again, your opponent only has 8 life, so you only have to hit them for 8 damage. So the sooner you get, you deal them that damage, the better. The irony is there's a Goku, set 1 green Goku, that on the front side and back side has double strike. The front side does not draw when it attacks. The back side does have the effect to draw when it attacks, and it has the whole, when you have 4 less life, draw 2 cards. So it's one of those old school leaders. But the fact that it starts off with double strike is nice, because you inherently already have the ability to do your opponent damage. And then the fact that it's green means you can use Napa Super Combo, right? Pump it up to 20k double strike, swinging at your opponent on as soon as turn 1, right? Which is awesome. The ability to just go straight in and just start dealing 2 damage. And the fact that you can swing for 2 damage every turn, just with the leader alone, that's very little, what's it called? That's very little, I always forget that term. It's an expression of paying for something, putting in very less, just, it requires very less effort, right? Very less resources. You don't have to put in as much, so that's the thing. Putting in, you put in less and get out more. So I've always been a fan of that leader, and I do have a build that I built. I just haven't made the video yet of the profile, but it is one of the leaders that I always see potential in. The more good green cards they come out with, the better the deck gets. Granted, you can play the leader with any other color, any other colors you choose. I'm just saying this, I like to be on brand, as they say. So since the leader's green, I wanna play green cards with the leader. I want to take advantage of the fact that the leader is green. So stuff like Rebrand and what's it called, Dormant Potential and stuff like that. I want to take advantage of the fact that the leader is green. But I could play like a blue-green build. I could do a red-green build, or just mostly green. Like the current build I have is mostly green because of the hand-destroying capabilities of the green cards like Rebrand and some of the unisons that I play. That way after I'm dealing my opponent all that double strike damage, I can just start ripping the cards out the hands afterwards. Just making it harder for them to take advantage of those resources that I gave them. So like I was saying, there's a lot of things that I like to, look into, certain card effects, certain leaders. I'm always experimenting with different leaders, because leaders are very interchangeable. Like, you can build a deck, a core of a deck, and then just change the leader whenever you feel like it. Whenever you want to feel like changing things up, you can, in case you want a leader that untaps 2 energies when it awakens, or draws 2 cards, or you want to use a surge leader or something. Like, having that mindset of being open to using different leaders with the same, with the same build, opens up different creative possibilities. The thing that's always unfortunate is that I always see players not trying to do that. They're always focusing on, like, if they have an idea for three green decks, they always try to make sure that they're extremely different, and they'll literally physically have 3 green decks instead of just having having the 3 leaders and just have one deck that they can use with the 3 leaders. They rather have enough cards to create the 3 decks, right? And literally have the 3 decks in hand, already in deck boxes, just ready to be used. I like doing the whole deck building collection where I have all the cards I need to build decks in a collection, all organized, already sleeved up, so then when I want to build a deck, I just grab the cards and then build the deck and instantly have a deck to play. I don't have to already have it built and in the deck box waiting to be used, and then it's like, I want to build another green deck, and then just go buy all the cards necessary to make another green deck, including staples, right? It's like if I already have a playset of rebrands, then I could just use that over and over again. Use that multiple times in a single multiple times to make multiple decks. I don't need to have a playset of rebrands for each green deck that I build. I could just use just one playset and just use it whenever, because it's not like you're going to be playing all the different decks all at once, right? Something you could do, however, right, is obviously use something like Untap and then build the decks there, so you can test and stuff like that and fine tune them, but have them there for whenever you want to test them out and stuff like that. And you'll have a list. You'll have something you can follow. So it's like, all right, I want to actually play this deck in an event. Then go grab the cards to build that deck, build the deck, and then take it to the event instead of already having it built. I mean, to each their own. You do what you want. It's your money, right? You want to spend money buying multiple copies of a play, of cards, then that's on you. But I'd rather just have just one play set, and then just use it whenever I'm going to use it. And a lot of players do that. I'm just saying that I noticed there are some players that tend to have when they have multiple different decks, especially if they're the same color, they tend to buy extra copies of staples for each deck, so that way each deck has their own sideboard, their own staples and stuff like that, instead of just sharing it, right? Having a whole scenario where it's like you just have one deck at a time, one deck already built with all the staples and stuff, and whenever you want to change the deck and play a different deck, what you have to do is change a couple cards, keep the staples in there, change a couple cards, and bang, now you have a whole new deck instantly. That makes it faster, more efficient, and it's just more budget friendly. It's not necessary to just buy 3 baby hatchiac just because you have 3 blue decks that you like to play. It's like, hey, you do you, that's your money, but I'm just saying it's not necessary. Just buy one, and then just whenever you need it and you're gonna play a certain one of your decks, then just grab all the cards you need to build the deck, including baby hatchiac, and then just play the deck. You don't have to have it already pre-built. You could just build it on the fly, right? As long as you have the list saved somewhere where you can always look it up and always build a deck real quick. That's all you really need. Now, I do have decks that are built up. So like I have my hatchiac deck built up, and then I have my cooler deck built up. I got I took my cell deck apart, but I'll probably rebuild it because there's a lot of new stuff coming out, so I can always upgrade that deck and rebuild it. I got my Gohan deck built up. I got my Bulma deck built up. But a lot of the decks use different cards, so I can have them built up, because they don't use a lot of the same stuff. And if I did have extra copies of something, like let's say Dimension Magic, and I just so happen to have 2 play sets of it, it's like, all right, well, I have 2 blue decks. I could just put one play set in one one deck and one playset and another deck, just because I just so happen to have it. But it's not necessary to go out and deliberately try to have two playsets of Dimension Magic. But hey, to each their own. You do you. If you prefer the whole build a deck, and store it and store a whole bunch of decks so you can grab and go and not have to, look for the cards and then build the deck. You do you. But there's just some ideas, for those who might be interested in being able to build decks. Because that's another thing I hate, is that some people don't build decks. Some people don't put effort into building their decks. They don't put effort into putting building their own decks and making a collection where they can build their decks from it and try and experiment and try different things. Usually they just wait until they see something good online and then just net deck it. Not to each their own, I'm not saying that it's wrong for them to net deck. I'm just saying that that's what typically happens. I'm more of like, I'd rather just build my own stuff. Another thing about building your own deck that's very important is the fact that, one, you know your deck better than anyone else would, right? Because you build it yourself. Another thing is the fact that you know your deck and other people don't. So you always have that element of surprise whenever you play. So whenever you play and you're trying different things, different cards, that throws your opponent off. And that always gives you a competitive advantage, which is always weird to see players not do that, not try to have the competitive advantage, right? They don't try to make sure that their deck isn't predictable. For some strange reason, they want their opponent to know what they're playing. Notice sometimes the players will tell each other, like, hey, what deck are you playing? What are you running? This, that, and third, And the irony is, they just need to hear the name of the deck and it's like, oh, okay, you're playing that deck? Okay. In their mind, they're thinking, okay, now I know what's in your deck. Like, they're really like, oh, now I know what's in your deck. I know what you're playing. I know what you could be playing. And they try to take advantage of that information, that knowledge. And then and I do this myself as well. If somebody tells me, what deck they're playing, and it's like, oh, you're playing that deck, so there's a high probability you're playing a specific type of build. So I pretty much know what you can and can't do and what you will be doing with that deck, because you're more likely playing a specific build, right? You're playing a specific archetype, a specific strategy. Like if you tell me you're playing Cell, okay, Cell Chain. it'd be rare for me to play a Cell player and Cell Chain isn't in there, right? Unless you're playing Cell Surge hand control, then there's a possibility that you might not be using the 7-drop Cell, the Cell Chain, but there's a possibility you are. Currently, right now, obviously the Cell Surge leader is banned, so you can't play Cell Surge hand control, but you can use the other cells, and there is a new one coming out. It's an upgraded version of the original Cell leader, so definitely looking forward to that, so I can upgrade into that new leader and rebuild the Cell deck and use all my Cell Chain stuff and just have lots of fun ripping my opponent's hands apart, going for game, all that good stuff, right? So that's why I prefer that people learn how to play the game, learn how to actually be good at the game, instead of just trying to learn how to play a certain deck, like just being good at net decking or just being good at playing following the meta by watching YouTube videos and be like, oh, that's what everybody's playing, okay, I'll play the same thing. It's like you could play something different, and that would give you more advantages than if you were playing the same thing everybody else plays. This is why you hear stuff about people talking about like, oh yeah, this deck was good in the meta, but everybody's prepared for that deck. Everybody makes sure their sideboard has this card and that card. So this is why you don't want to play a deck that everyone knows what's in the deck, because then they will prepare for it. They'll try to have the advantage. And that's the whole thing about side decking, is the idea of having an advantage in certain matchups. They're not going to put cards in their sideboard that doesn't give them the, unfair advantage. I'll put it that way because that's what it really is. Unfair advantage. Me personally, side decking is cheating. Shouldn't exist in card games. But hey, I don't make the rules. So I just choose not to use side deck because I don't believe in using it. I believe in actually being good at the game. Actually being good at putting stuff in my main deck that generically is good, that no matter who I play against, the card has some use. I don't want to play, do the whole side deck thing and be like, okay, against this deck, I have to play these cards, so I have to switch these cards out. No, I'd rather actually, have cards that are just generically good and work against anyone. This is why I have stuff like 12 unisons in the deck, for example, because of the fact, have 3 different types of unisons, right? Max them out, 4 copies each. Have 3 different unisons because I need them for the 3 phases of the game. So the first two turns is early game, then turn 3, turn 4, that's mid game, and turn 5 and above, that's late game. So for those 3 parts of a game, I want to make sure that I have a unison for those scenarios. So 1 drops and 2 drops. I'll try to have a 1 drop or a 2 drop, then I'll try to have a 3 or a 4 drop, and then I'll try to have a 5 drop and higher unison. And that'll be for those phases, right? Because can't play a 4 drop unison on turn 1. I wish. Someday that might be a possibility, but for now, that is not the case. So for now, I have to, utilize the, I have to, utilize the fact that I can only play them at the time I can afford to play them. Can't play them sooner than I'm allowed to, right? So that's why I have multiple unisons in a deck for that. I noticed a lot more players started playing more than 1 unison in a deck. Typically for a long while they only played like 1 unison. They choose 1 unison and then they played 2 copies, 3 copies, or 4 copies. But then after a while I started noticing people playing more than 1 type of unison in their deck. And the ratios would be like a 2-4 split, right, or a 3-3 split, something of that nature. Usually they try to keep it like like 6, 8, between 8 and 6 unison, right? But especially with the new Goku leader, the fact that you might have players playing 8 or more unisons. They'll play more unisons, so they have more than 8 unisons in total in their deck. So they might play 12 unisons just because of that leader, which will be ironic. It's like, I play 12 unisons with every leader, but because of this one leader, people are going to start playing 12 unisons. And probably not anymore because they don't want to, fill their deck up with too many cards that don't have combo power. All right. Because not everyone has gotten to my level of play style where they can play without combo power. So people still need combo power, right? People still need super combo. So, hey, to each their own. I don't try to force people to play beyond their capabilities, right? Or beyond their limits. Like, if people don't want to play at my level, I'm going to say level. Fuck it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Yeah, don't want to play at my level, that's fine. Don't gotta play like me. Don't gotta play the game on hard mode like I do, like some people will say. If y'all want to keep playing it on easy mode or normal, on tutorial, right? Then you do you. I'm not against it. Ultimately, I want people to enjoy the game however way they enjoy it. As long as they're not toxic or problematic and doesn't create issues for everybody else. To each their own. I just hate it when players want to play a certain type of way and then they try to force everybody else to play that way. Where it's like, nah, you gotta play this way because this is the way it should be. And it's like, nah, that's why we have these ridiculous, ban lists and stuff like that sometimes, where people are crying about certain cards, like, oh, this card's too unfair, this strategy is too unfair, this playstyle's too unfair, I don't like it, blah, 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 and keep complaining instead of getting good at the game and getting better at it to the point where that stuff doesn't matter. No, they want to complain. They rather complain because it's easier to complain than it is to get good. Yeah, I said it. It's easier to complain than it is to get good. Just like it's easier in that deck than it is to learn how to build a deck from scratch. Yeah, it's not rocket science, ironically, but a lot of people act like it is. They're definitely trying to act like it's rocket science. Now, even though I have like a master class, which reminds me I need to do another master class episode, video, but even though I have a master class, the game is not that complicated. The funny thing about my master class is just trying to prove that the game is simple. It's easy to understand if you take the time to try to understand the game. Because I literally see people online, trying to make the game sound more difficult. I'll see people during their deck profiles when they're talking about their decks and stuff, and talking about the state of the game, the meta, and this and that, third, and all this stuff. And they always try to make it seem like the game is way too hard, and then like it takes, people a particular set of skills, like they have to be John Wick in order to be good at Dragon Ball Super. Like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You could be a grandma and be good at Dragon Ball Super. The game ain't that difficult, ain't that hard. I've said it many times before. The first 4 damage is the easiest, so no way anyone try to make this game out to be difficult or complicated. The next 2 requires a little bit of effort. That's 6 damage right there. The first 6 damage is cake. It's not hard. The last 2, yes, is the hardest. Yes, it's the hardest. And I say that always. Last 2 damage is the hardest. And those 2 damages is what determines, winning and losing. Which is why players, especially competitive players, should be focusing on the last 2 damage. The strategies out here, the tech cards people be talking about putting in their decks should be for that purpose, to deal the last 2 damage. That's what I want to hear. I don't want to be hearing people talking about, oh, I tech this card in case my opponent plays Topo. I have this card for that. Like, what? If my opponent, plays Baby Hatchak, I have this counter for it. Like, okay, so that's your focus. That's what matters. That's what's important. It's stopping your opponent from playing a card. Are you kidding me? Why don't you focus on beating your opponent? The spice, the tech that you put into your deck should give you the advantage to win the game outright, not stop your opponent from being able to play the game, so that way you could try to win just because they can't win, right? The whole idea is like, what? If my opponent can't win, obviously by default I win. Like, yeah, that is true, but why go through that? Why do that, right? It's kind of like challenging somebody to a fight, and instead of actually beating them at the fight, what you do is you just keep blocking all their shots until they get tired and they don't want to fight no more. And then right before they walk away, you just punch them, and then now, their lips swollen and stuff like that. And then when people see them, then you'll try to brag like, yeah, I whooped his ass. Even though you were taking a whooping the whole entire time of the fight. You just waited until the person gave up and didn't want to fight no more, and then you took advantage of it and then punched them. And then talking about you won the fight. Like, what? Are you sure you won your fight? Because technically you didn't. If we were doing technical, doing, boxing level, rules and stuff, the fact that he hits you with a lot of good shots, mathematically, he wins because he has a lot more points than you, because he dealt you more damage. But yeah, whatever. If you want to take the cheap shot, you want to win because you ran out the bell, right? You ran out the time, so you went the distance, as they say, or you got that cheap shot. You caught them slipping. You caught them not paying attention, and you got that that nice little one-hitter quitter in there. Hey, whatever. That's not my style. I'd rather let my opponent play the game, do what their deck is supposed to do, and then beat them. That way, one, I know that I'm better because I was able to beat their deck's best strategy. I was able to actually beat them. when they're at full power, and then I can share that experience, that knowledge with other people. Show other people like, hey, you can beat this person if you play, you know, this way, as opposed to, you know, nah, the only way you could beat Dark Broly or King Piccolo or whatever is popular right now, right? The only way you can beat them is if you have these specific cards, and these cards right now are expensive. It's like, what? No, you don't. That's ridiculous. That's terrible if your advice is, when it comes to winning a certain, you know, winning at this game, is you gotta buy these expensive cards and that's how you win. Money's how you win. Like, no, money's not how you win. Ironically, money is usually a score, right? It's proof that you did something, you achieved something. So the money is, proof of that. It's kind of like getting a trophy. It's kind of like getting a trophy, and then you're like, hey, look, here's proof that I, was really good at something, so I got a trophy for it. So that's essentially what like money is. So the idea of like, oh, let me spend money on getting these really, really good cards because that equals me winning. It's like, no, it doesn't. You winning because you're actually good at the game equals you winning. You being better than your opponent. You're making better decisions than your opponent. Your understanding of the game is more important than how much you spend on it. So that's why it's ridiculous to spend a shitload of money on the game, when in reality you can win with a $20 deck, with a stack of spare cards. You know what I mean? Like, it's just always weird to me that how some people over exaggerate certain situations. They're really I call it brainwashing and whatnot. Just the idea of like, oh, the best, you gotta pay to win. You gotta have the best cards in the game to be good. In anything in life, you have to have the best thing. It's like, no, you can have the worst thing and be a winner. You don't have to be 6 feet tall to be a great basketball player. Is it helpful? Yeah. Does it give you an advantage? Yeah, in certain cases. But if everybody else is also 6 feet, then it's nothing special, right? But if you're 5 feet tall, for example, and you're really good at basketball, that is something that's noteworthy. That's something to brag about. Something I definitely can respect. Because like, damn, you're in a situation where being 6 feet is more beneficial or is more common, but you're being uncommon, as it were, right? You're doing something different, and because you're different, that puts you in a different category, right? Puts you in a different position, right? Different situation. So the fact that you can do amazing things within your different situation, then that will always be something that I can respect. That's something that is the idea of being good at something. When you're good at something, you're good at it, right? And it's hard to brag about being good at something if all you're doing is trying to get shortcuts by net decking, by buying the best cards in the game, so to speak, right? There's some people. I'm not against people, getting high rarity cards, foiling out their decks. Hey, your money. You like your decks to look shiny. That's fine. I'm not against that. I'm just against the idea of thinking because a card is shiny, therefore it constitutes the card being good. Therefore and by the card being quote unquote good because it's shiny, and that you own the shiny card, that you think you're good because of it, right? That equates to your worth. So the fact that some people think their value, to the community or society and whatnot, comes from, the values of their cards, the value of what they own and how their deck looks and this, that, and third, is just ironic. So ironic. It's like, no, your skills are supposed to be your value. Your skills supposed to be your value. That's what people are supposed to be judging you on. That's what people are supposed to, respect is your skills when you're actually good at something. This whole idea of like, oh no, I want people to think I'm good. I don't actually have to be good. It's the whole fake it until you make it concept, right? It's like, sad that people want to make believe, want to pretend they're something they're not. It's like, no, actually be good at something. So that way people can see it, acknowledge it, and go from it. But what's extra ironic is that when someone is actually good at something, the irony is that a lot of times people think it's fake. Like, nah, no way you could be that good at this game. This game is so difficult and complex. It's like, incorrect. It's not difficult. It's not complex. That's just you. For you, the game is difficult. For you, the game is complex. But in reality, no, it's not complex. No, it's not difficult. You know what I mean? Now, some people might want to argue, the thing is that just because it's easy for you and it's not difficult for you doesn't mean it's not difficult, or doesn't mean it's not difficult, doesn't mean it's not hard. And it's like, the thing is, the game itself, the mechanics of it, which is what I study the most, is easy. It's a fact. It's a fact that this game is easy. It's not complicated. The thing is that players make it complicated, and that's where you get this whole scenario where it's like, the game being easy or hard is subjective. It's subjective when you add the human element to it. But when I talk about the game being easy, I'm talking about the game itself, the actual physical game itself, the cards, the mechanics, the rules is simple. That's why I say when the game is easy, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, when you play against a certain player and they like to play a certain type of way, and that type of way they play, throws you off. Sometimes it's hard for you to predict their moves, their plays, the decisions they make, be confusing you sometimes. That's different. That's, right? That's a different category. That's a different topic. That right there is human elements that makes it difficult. Just like some people might be like, oh man, sometimes I don't know, when it's the best time to play a negate or to block or to use a super combo or something like that. Sometimes I use a super combo too early. It's like, yeah, but that has nothing to do with the game. That has to do with you. That's the difference. So it's you that makes the game difficult and hard, not the game itself actually being difficult and hard. So that's why I'm always trying to teach people the actual game, right? Teach. That's what I do. I'm not a content creator. I'm a teacher. I'm a player. I play the game. I mastered it. I'm not mastered Ultra Instinct. I haven't achieved that status yet. I'm still working on that. But, I've gotten high enough in the understanding of the game and in the skill level that I wanted to have for the game, so I can be where I'm at, sorry, to be at the skill level that I'm at, where I'm able to share my knowledge and experience with other people, and that's why I could build decks, pretty easily because of all that knowledge and experience. Once you're good at something, you're good at it, right? Like once you're good at fixing cars, you can fix any car, right? It'd be weird for somebody to think, oh no, I thought you were only good at fixing Lamborghinis or Honda Civics or Nissans. I didn't know you were good at fixing any cars. I learned to be good at fixing cars in general. Why wouldn't I be good at, fixing cars in general? See, the assumption is thinking that for you to be good, you have to focus on one thing and then be good at that one thing only. So somebody be like, oh yeah, I'm good at Dragon Ball Super. Like, oh really? You are? But they only play one deck. And it's, what deck? Janemba. I use that as an example because it's funny, right? Janemba Mill. That's it. It's like, wait, you play Janemba Mill? That's it? You just negate attacks, block attacks, and just keep swinging with the leader until your opponent mills out, and that's it. So you think you're really good at the game when all you do is play Janemba Mill. Are you sure you're good at the game? You know what I mean? That kind of stuff, And then I'm gonna throw some shade. It's the same thing as playing Invoker, right? The whole idea of like, oh, I'm really good at the game. Yeah, you're really good at attacking, dealing some damage at the most basic level. Leader, unison, if you have a unison, and battle card. So you swing with the leader, swing with a battle card, you deal a good amount of damage, and then you try to finish your opponent off with burn. But that's what the archetype is designed to do. It's designed to do that exact strategy. Deal enough damage to get your opponent to the point where you can finish them off with catastrophic blow. Not much skill there. That's just basic game plan. So it's more about, practicing and getting used to playing the strategy, but it's not really about mastering the game and being good at the game. It's just about getting good at that deck's specific strategy, and that's it. I'm not against people who prefer to just learn and master certain strategies, and then that's all they play is those specific strategies. That's fine. It's no different from like learning a martial arts, right? Like learning Kung Fu or Taekwondo, and then you just focus on that style. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna learn Taekwondo, and that's it. I don't need to learn every other fighting style. Just Taekwondo is enough. That's enough. That's good enough for me. It's like, all right, fine, teach them. You don't have to learn every deck in the game. You don't have to learn every effect. You don't have to master every playstyle like aggro, mid-range, control, mill, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, fair enough. Choose your path, choose your destiny, and, do you, right? But there are some people, like I said, that do love to claim to be something that they're really not. They'll claim to be really good at, the game when they're not. They'll try to claim that they're really good at building decks when they're not. One way is when you see them and you be like, oh, what deck you got? And then they don't tell you they, like some unique build that they created. No, they'll be like, oh, I'm just playing Dark Broly, or I'm playing a King Piccolo or some shit like that. Like, they'll just tell you something simple and you're like, oh, okay. Well, that's nothing new. That's nothing special. Right? That's how you know they're not really deck builders, right? That's how you know they're not really that good at the game. I'm not saying they can't be good at playing the game. What I'm saying, they're not really good at the game. So they don't know every aspect of it. A good example of this, so people can understand, for those who might not understand what I'm saying and disagree with me, it's the idea of like a fighting game, like I'll say Street Fighter, right? You have all these characters. You have Ken, Ryu, and stuff like that, right? Chun-Li and whatnot. But instead of learning how to be good with all the characters, or at least if your favorite character is Ryu, it would be a good idea for you to learn how to play Ken just in case, because they're pretty much similar. And then, that way at least you have two characters you can play. But instead, you just rather play one character, and then think you're the best player to ever play the game, but you only play one character. So you're good with that one character, and if you want to claim, the funny thing, I've seen some people who claim they're the best at playing a specific deck. Like, oh, I'm the best Gohan U7 leader, or I'm the best, Invoker leader. I mean, not leader, player. I'm the best Invoker player, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, I can respect those. I like when people say that, because it's like, good. At least you're specifying that you're really good at one thing, as opposed to just claiming in general, oh, I'm really awesome at this game. I'm the best player to play this game ever. It's like, not really. There's tons of players out here that are way better than you. But hey, not all of them play competitively. Not all of them make YouTube videos, and the list goes on and on, right? But the point is that it's like saying you're the best because you put a lot of time and effort at playing a certain deck. That I can respect, because at least that's honest, right? That makes sense. It's like, okay, I can believe that. I can believe you're the best Invoker player, right? Because that makes sense. If you put a lot of time and effort into it, I expect you to be the best at playing Invoker. Some people will see, I'll put it out there. Some people will probably see me as the Hatchiac player. It's so funny that most of my legendary status online, when it comes to the Dragon Ball Super community, comes from other people deciding what describes me. Like, I'm the guy that don't play super combos, right? I'm the Hatchiac guy, and so forth and so forth. So it's like, apparently now Hatchiac is my is my character deck, right? Is a deck that I'm known for, which is ironic considering the fact that I mainly play red and blue more than I play Hatchiac or any other color. It's like, yeah, I have a lot of Hatchiac. The funny thing, I play Bulma way more than I play Hatchiac. Way more. I have way more Bulma builds than I have Hatchag builds. But ironically, because it's funny, right, meme worthy to make me the Hatchag player instead of, just a player. There was even a time where I wasn't even considered a player. So at least I kind of got upgraded. At least people were acknowledging me as a player. There was a time, like for the first 2 years, people were just like, first people were just like, I'm not good at the game. I don't really play the game. They don't think I play the game. They think I'm fake or something. I don't actually play the game. Like, okay, that's weird to think that. And then it evolved to, that I'm just a deck builder. That's all I do. I just build decks. And then, of course, some people are going to complain. He don't play competitively, so I don't care what he has to say. It's like, okay. And then after a while, now the most recent thing was the whole, content creator thing. Like, oh, he's a content creator. It's like, no, I'm not. So it's just the irony that in the community, what I am or what people know me for is whatever they label me as, which is the irony. I am what people label me as in this community, as opposed to what I label myself as, right? So that's the irony. There's just some people out there that say I'm their Lord and Savior, which is funny. King, I've seen that a lot. Legend. Master Kung Fu was the most recent one, by the way. Yeah, a lot of people, referring to me Master, which is cool. That makes more sense. It's like, it's about time people acknowledge that my deck profile always says by Kung Fu, and that's who I am. I'm Kung Fu and my channel is CardGamesTV1. So that's the name I go by. So that's why it's just ironic that most people now are going with the Kung Fu terminologies. So we'll see how long that lasts. One time somebody called me Kung Fu Panda. That was funny. One time somebody called me that. I'm like, what? What the hell, Kung Fu? I mean, I've been called Kung Fu Panda before. It was just ironic to hear that in Dragon Ball Super community. Somebody called me Kung Fu Panda. I was like, wait, what? But yeah, man, just a lot of stuff that I see. I do pay attention to what goes on in the competitive scene, what goes on in the community, even what goes on casually, because there's some channels out there that just post casual gameplay where they just record themselves playing games for fun at home, and they post it online, which is nice to see people playing the game and enjoying the game for what it is, a game. There are some people that take it way too far. Way too far, but hey, to each their own. Hopefully they try not to take it too far. That's why I mentioned earlier about the idea of people just they try to act like their deck becomes their personality. That's like a new term most people have been using on the internet, when they're like, oh my god, his card is his personality, or his money is his personality. So it's like that's a expression I've been hearing for the past 1.5 years. So it's like, yeah, that's what people are doing nowadays. They try to equate themselves to something, and usually something materialistic. Like, hey, I have this very expensive deck. That's who I am. This is my personality. The ownership of this deck. Like, okay, that's weird, but whatever. I mean, it's one thing to have a favorite deck. It's another thing to, try to be the best and be like, all right, this is my deck. This is what I play. And, I'm very good with it. It's another thing where it's literally your personality. Oh, well. I'm not against, fantasy, right? The idea of role playing and stuff like that. If you want to play a character, you want to, be like, yeah, this deck is my personality. I'm such and such player. Like, I'm the Invoker player, or I'm the King Piccolo player. They're like, yeah, that's fine and all. I'm not against it. Just noticing it. That's all I'm saying. As long as you understand that, that it's all fun and games, then it's not a problem. It's when you really believe your own hype, that's when it becomes a problem. Yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised. Some people will say that about me, like, oh, but you believe in your own hype. Because I remember one time somebody pointing that out to me, of like, you really think they like you? They're trolling you. You don't understand. They don't actually think you're good. Blah 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 blah. It's like, I don't actually care. I never asked them to think that I'm good at the game or whatever, or to, give me praises or whatever. I'm just doing me, living my life, sharing, my ideas with the world, whether they like it or not, right? I don't care either way, because the thing is, if I die, at least all that stuff will still be here for those who might care. So I'm leaving useful stuff, here. That's why I share my ideas, so that way if somebody benefits from it, great. If they don't, okay, don't matter, right? Because regardless, if people like my ideas or not, I still use them. I still benefit from them. And I'm just sharing it in case it's other people, want to benefit from them. And I have people who do like my stuff and do try it, which is logical. Try it, you might like it. Too many people want to hate something just for the sake of hating it. Oh, this is different. This is not something I'm used to, so I'm going to make it seem like it's a bad thing. It's like, no. Let's not think negative, right? It's the whole innocent until proven guilty concept. People have flipped it. Now it's guilty until proven innocent. Everything's a lie until you prove it's true. It's like, damn. See, I'm from the generation where it is innocent until proven guilty. Something is true until you can prove it's a lie. Right? The idea of like, nah, it ain't true. It's automatically a lie. Like, no. It's true until you prove it's a lie. That's the order in which things work. It's true until you can prove it's a lie. Like, for example, we exist, right? Reality, God, whatever you want to believe in. The point is, the truth is, we do exist, but why though, right? But the point is, we do exist. So until we can prove otherwise, we do exist. Just like if you believe in God, well, God exists until you prove otherwise. There is no, not true. God does not exist. So you have to prove he exists. No. He does exist until, or God exists. It exists until you prove otherwise. Because the concept of God, for example, is based off of the fact that we exist in the first place. The universe exists. Why? That's the real question. And because the real question is why, not if, like if this is true or not. No, the question is why. Why, things exist. Why, things are the way they are. Then everything is true until proven wrong, right? Everything is right until it's proven incorrect. Just like if I'm like, you don't need super combos, I'm right until you prove me wrong. If I say my decks are good, I'm right until you prove me wrong. If I say, Mel Nimba is going to be, the top tier deck in this current format, if more players play it, it's true until, I'm proven wrong. And the list goes on and on, I can't wait to see the more spoilers from the new set. I'm getting into my deck building mode, so I definitely want to. Well, I'm gonna finish off this, end this podcast. I can go get to working on some decks, and that's the end of the podcast.